The lighthouse screamed before the radio did. That was how Emily Dawson would remember it later. Not the thunder, not the waves, not even the sound of the glass cracking under the force of the storm. She would remember the lighthouse itself groaning like something alive, its ancient iron bones trembling against the fury of the North Atlantic, while the beam above her swept desperately across a black and violent sea. Every 7 seconds, light cut through the rain. Every 7 seconds, darkness swallowed it again. Emily stood inside the lantern room with one hand pressed against the cold glass, watching waves explode against the cliffs below like white fire. No boats should have been out there. No fishing crews. No ferries. No pleasure yachts filled with careless millionaires pretending they could outrun weather. The Coast Guard had issued warnings 12 hours ago. The island had been officially sealed from the mainland. And still, sometime after midnight, the radio came alive. At first, it was only static. A thin, broken hiss beneath the storm. Emily turned away from the windows and looked toward the old radio console bolted into the wall. It was older than she was, older than the small stone cottage beneath the lighthouse, older than half the men who came from the mainland once a month to inspect the generators and ask why a woman her age chose to live alone on a rock off the Scottish coast. Static cracked again. Then, a voice pushed through, weak, distant, almost buried beneath the storm. Mayday. Emily froze. The words slid through the room like a blade. She stepped toward the radio. "This is Bellrock Station," she said, grabbing the microphone. "Repeat your position." Static. Then the voice returned. "Mayday, Mayday." The signal broke apart. Emily adjusted the frequency with trembling fingers. Rain battered the glass overhead. The lighthouse beam swept across the sea again. Nothing. Only waves. Only darkness. "This is Bellrock Station," she repeated. "Vessel in distress. Identify yourself." For 3 seconds, there was only static. Then the voice came again, clearer this time. Vesper. Emily's breath caught. The microphone slipped slightly in her hand. No, that was impossible. She stared at the radio, as if the machine had spoken a ghost's name. The Vesper had sunk 22 years ago. Everyone along the northern coast knew the story. A private research vessel. A storm. A vanished crew. No bodies recovered. No wreckage found. Only rumors. The kind people whispered about in pubs after too many drinks. The kind fishermen avoided discussing when fog rolled in thick from the sea. Emily knew the story better than most, because her father had been aboard that ship. Or at least, that was what she had been told. "Repeat that," she whispered. The radio screamed with static. Then, a different sound came through. Not a voice. A sequence. 3 short pulses. 1 long, 2 short. Silence. Then again. 3 short. 1 long, 2 short. Emily's skin went cold. It was not Morse code. Not exactly. But it was deliberate. A pattern. A message. She reached for the emergency logbook, flipping through pages with wet, shaking fingers. The storm made the walls shudder. Somewhere below, one of the shutters slammed open and banged against stone. The pattern repeated again. 3 short. 1 long. 2 short. Then the voice returned. Not the weak voice anymore. A man's voice. Low. Controlled. Almost calm. "Do not answer." Emily stopped breathing. The room seemed to shrink around her. She leaned closer to the speaker. "What did you say?" Static cracked. The voice came again. "Do not send the signal." A violent gust hit the lighthouse so hard, the glass panels rattled above her head. Emily tightened her grip on the microphone. "Identify yourself." The answer did not come. Only the pattern. Again. 3 short. 1 long. 2 short. Then, the Mayday call returned. Thin and desperate. Mayday. Vesper. Taking water. Emily's heart pounded. Her training told her what to do. When a distress call came through, you answered. You logged the signal. You contacted the Coast Guard. You relayed coordinates. You did not stand inside a lighthouse, listening to a dead ship whisper through a storm. She grabbed the emergency transmitter. This is Bellrock Station to Coast Guard. Possible distress signal received from vessel identifying as Vesper. Repeat, Vesper. Request immediate response. The moment she sent it, the lighthouse went dark. Not dim. Not flickering. Dark. Every bulb inside the lantern room died at once. The rotating beam above her stopped. The radio cut out. The emergency panel failed. Even the backup lights along the stairs vanished. For the first time in 80 years, Bellrock Lighthouse went blind. Emily stood in complete darkness, while the sea roared below. Then something inside the radio clicked. Once, twice, a soft red light blinked on. A voice came through. The same calm voice as before, only closer now. You should not have done that. Emily stumbled backward. The microphone cord tangled around her wrist. Who are you? The voice answered after a long pause. Someone who just ran out of time. The red light died. The radio went silent. And outside, somewhere beyond the storm, a distant flare rose into the night. Blood red. Then another. Then a third. Emily moved to the window. Far out across the water, red fire burned in the rain. Not from a ship. From the cliffs on the neighboring rocks. Signal flares. Someone was already on the island chain. Someone had been waiting for her to answer. By dawn, the storm had not passed. It had only changed shape. Rain became mist. Mist became fog. The sea still heaved against the cliffs, but the sky had lightened to a colorless gray that made the entire island look abandoned by God. Emily had not slept. She had spent the night trying to restore communications, but every system was dead. Satellite phone, marine radio, emergency broadband. Even the old landline that connected through a buried cable beneath the sea had produced nothing but a hollow clicking sound. The lighthouse beam remained frozen, a dead eye staring into the storm. At 5:17 a.m., she heard the first helicopter. At first, she thought it was rescue. Relief nearly broke her. She threw on her coat and ran out of the lighthouse, boots sliding on wet stone as the wind tore at her hair. But when she reached the cliff path, she stopped. There was not one helicopter. There were 12, black, unmarked, moving through the fog in perfect formation. Below them, the sea filled with boats, high-speed assault boats, military grade, sleek black hulls cutting through the waves around the island. Not Coast Guard, not Navy, not rescue. Emily backed away slowly. What the hell? The helicopters circled once. Then one descended toward the flat stone clearing near the old supply shed. Its rotors sent rain and seawater whipping across the ground. Emily shielded her face as the aircraft landed. The door opened. Men in dark tactical gear stepped out first. Then, one man followed. Tall, black coat, no helmet, no visible weapon. He moved through the storm as if the storm had been told to make room for him. Every armed man around him shifted without speaking. Not out of coordination, out of obedience. Emily knew before anyone said his name that he was not military. Military men carried authority. This man carried consequence. He looked up the cliff path and found her immediately, as if he had known exactly where she would be. Emily's fingers tightened around the flare gun hidden in her coat pocket. The man walked toward her alone. He did not hurry. He did not smile. Rain darkened his hair and ran down the sharp angles of his face. When he stopped a few feet away, Emily saw his eyes, cold, focused, and disturbingly tired. "Emily Dawson," he said. Her stomach dropped. "You know my name." "Yes? Who are you?" His gaze moved past her, up to the lighthouse. Then back to her. Adrian Vale. The name meant nothing for 1 second. Then memory caught up. Newspaper headlines, financial scandals, political disappearances, luxury hotels in Monaco, private banks in Geneva, a shipping empire no government could quite investigate. And beneath all of it, the rumor no official paper ever printed directly. Adrian Vale was the most powerful mafia boss in Europe. Emily took 1 step back. He noticed. His expression did not change. "You sent the signal," he said. "I sent an SOS." "No." His voice was calm. "You sent an activation code. That doesn't make sense." "It will." "I don't know anything about an activation code. I believe you." That answer unsettled her more than disbelief would have. Behind him, more helicopters descended through the fog. Boats formed a perimeter around the island. Armed men moved with frightening precision along the shore. Emily looked past him. "What are you doing here? Securing the island. This is not your island. It is now." She stared at him. "What?" "I bought it." The words hit her so absurdly that for a second she almost laughed. "You bought Bellrock?" "Yes. There are 3 families on the—" "Not anymore. The lighthouse is protected property." "Not anymore. You can't just buy an island overnight." Adrian's eyes held hers. "I can." The wind whipped between them. Emily felt a cold, angry pressure build behind her ribs. Of all the impossible things that had happened since midnight, this was the one that made her furious. The dead ship, the warning voice, the blackout, the red flares, the black helicopters, and now this man standing in front of her, as if purchasing her entire world was an administrative detail. "You need to leave," she said. "No, this is my station." It was. Her jaw tightened. "I don't care who you are." One of his men shifted slightly behind him. Adrian lifted one hand. The man stopped instantly. Emily noticed that. The quiet obedience, the fear disguised as discipline. Adrian stepped closer. Not enough to touch her, only enough that his voice fell beneath the wind. "Emily, in less than 6 hours, men who have been asleep for 20 years will come to this island." She hated the way he said her name, as if he had the right to know it. "Asleep? Waiting. For what?" "For the signal your father built." The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. Emily stared at him. "My father is dead." "No." Her throat tightened. "He died on the Vesper." "No. You don't know anything about him." "I know more than you do." The slap landed without a hand. Emily's breath came sharper. "Don't." For the first time, something flickered in Adrian's expression. Not regret, not softness, but restraint, as if he had stopped himself from saying the rest because he knew it would hurt. That restraint made her angrier. "You come here with guns and helicopters, buy my home, tell me my father isn't dead, and expect me to believe you? I expect you to survive long enough to hate me properly." The line should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it sounded almost weary. A strange silence opened between them. Then a radio crackled from one of Adrian's men. "Sir." Adrian did not look away from Emily. "What?" "North Ridge." Movement. Emily turned toward the cliffs. Fog rolled low over the rocks. At first, she saw nothing. Then a figure appeared at the edge of the mist. Then another. Then 5. Not rescue workers. Not soldiers from Adrian's team. They wore gray waterproof gear with no markings, moving silently between the rocks. 2. Silently. One of them raised something long and black. Adrian moved before Emily understood. His arm locked around her waist. He pulled her hard against him and turned his body between hers and the ridge. The shot cracked through the fog. The bullet struck the lighthouse wall where her head had been a second earlier. Stone shattered. Emily gasped. Adrian's men returned fire instantly. The quiet island exploded into violence. The attackers vanished into the rocks. Adrian kept one arm around Emily, pushing her behind the remains of an old stone wall as bullets tore through the rain. "Stay down." She tried to pull away. "Let go. Not when someone is shooting at you. I didn't ask for your protection." "No," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "You activated it." Another bullet struck the stone above them. Fragments rained over her hair. Adrian looked at the impact mark, then toward the ridge. Something changed in his face. The coldness sharpened. But beneath it, Emily saw something else. Not just calculation, fear. Not for himself. For here, a second helicopter swept low over the ridge, its searchlight cutting through fog. The attackers retreated into the rocks. Gunfire faded. For a moment, there was only rain and the sound of Emily's breathing against Adrian's chest. Then she realized how close they were. His coat smelled like rain, smoke, and something expensive she could not name. His hand was still at her waist. Firm, protective, possessive. She shoved away from him. He let her, but only after checking the ridge again. Emily looked at the bullet hole in the lighthouse, then back at him. "Who are they?" Adrian's answer came without hesitation. "The first one's awake." The wind seemed to die around them. Emily swallowed. "What did my father create?" Adrian looked up at the lighthouse lantern room, where the dead glass still faced the sea. Then he looked back at her, a signal that was never supposed to be sent. Before she could demand more, one of his men approached quickly. "Sir, we found something in the keeper's cottage." Emily stiffened. "What did you do?" Adrian's gaze moved to his man. "What?" The guard hesitated. "A room below the cellar." Emily blinked. "That's impossible." The guard looked at her. "It has your father's name on the door." The cold returned all at once. Not from the storm, from inside her. Emily turned toward the cottage at the base of the lighthouse. She had lived there for 6 years. Slept there, worked there, stored groceries in the cellar every winter. She knew every crack in the stone, every pipe, every shadow. There was no room below the cellar. There could not be. Adrian watched her face, and for the first time, his voice lowered into something almost human. "You really didn't know." Emily hated that he sounded sad. She hated even more that he was right. "No," she whispered. The storm rolled over the island again. Far below, the black boats tightened their circle around Bellrock. Above them, helicopters cut through the fog like vultures. And somewhere beneath the home, Emily thought she understood. A door with her father's name waited in the dark. Adrian stepped beside her. Not in front this time. Beside. "Whatever is down there," he said. "It is why they are coming." Emily looked at him. The man who had bought her island. The man who had lied by omission from the moment he arrived. The man whose arms had just pulled her away from death. She should have stepped away. Instead, she looked toward the cottage. "Then we open it." Adrian's jaw tightened. "That may be exactly what they want." Emily met his eyes. "Then they should have killed me before I got curious." For the first time since stepping off the helicopter, Adrian Vale almost smiled. Not warmly, not safely, but like a man recognizing danger in someone else, and finding it beautiful. Together, they walked toward the cottage while the storm swallowed the island behind them. The cottage door had never looked dangerous before. For 6 years, Emily Dawson had pushed it open with her shoulder while carrying groceries from the supply boat, kicked snow from her boots onto the worn stone floor, and listened to rain drum against the small kitchen windows while tea boiled on the stove. It had been lonely. It had been cold, but it had always been hers. Now, with Adrian Vale walking beside her and armed men spreading silently around the cottage walls, the place felt unfamiliar, like something had been hiding inside it the entire time. The storm pushed against the windows. The lighthouse tower loomed behind them, dark and blind, its beams still frozen above the sea. Emily stepped into the cottage first. Adrian followed. 2 of his men moved in behind him, but he lifted one hand without looking. Outside, one of them hesitated. "Sir." Outside. The word was quiet. The men obeyed immediately. Emily noticed again how quickly people listened to him. Not because he shouted, because they were more afraid of disobeying him than of the storm, the shooters, or whatever waited beneath the island. The cottage door shut behind them. For the first time since the helicopter landed, Emily and Adrian were alone. Almost. The room still held the smell of wet wool, old wood, sea salt, and the faint smoke from last night's fire. A mug sat on the table where she had left it before the radio came alive. An open book lay face down near the window. Her father's old compass rested on the shelf above the stove. Everything looked painfully normal. That was what made it unbearable. Emily crossed the kitchen without speaking and opened the cellar door. Cold air breathed up from below. Adrian stepped closer. "Stay behind me." She looked back at him. "This is my house. And someone built a room beneath it without your knowledge. That doesn't mean you get to lead. It means I go first." His voice carried no arrogance, only finality. Emily held his gaze. "I don't take orders from men who buy islands before breakfast." Something almost moved at the corner of his mouth. Almost. Then his expression went still again. "No," he said. "You just send dormant assassin networks emergency signals during storms." She hated that he had a point. She hated more that she almost wanted to smile. Almost. The moment passed quickly. Adrian pulled a small flashlight from inside his coat and descended first. Emily followed him down the narrow stone steps. The cellar smelled of damp earth and old salt. Shelves lined the walls, filled with emergency supplies, spare lantern oil, rusted tools, rope, generator parts, and crates of canned food. Everything exactly as she remembered. Except for the far wall, one of Adrian's men had moved the storage rack away, revealing a steel panel hidden behind old stonework. Emily stared at it. She had stacked boxes against that wall dozens of times. She had leaned her back against it during storms. She had cried there once, on the anniversary of her father's disappearance, when the silence of the island had finally become too heavy. And behind it, this door had been waiting. Adrian crouched and studied the panel. No handle, no keyhole, only a narrow black strip embedded into the steel. A biometric reader. Emily laughed once, but there was no humor in it. My father could barely operate a microwave. He built communication systems for governments before he disappeared. Emily looked at him sharply. "What?" Adrian did not turn. "You were told he was a ship engineer." He was. He was also something else. The cold in the room seemed to move under her skin. Adrian placed 2 fingers against the edge of the steel frame and found a hidden seam. This door wasn't built to keep people out. What was it built for? To stay closed until you found it. Emily swallowed. "I didn't find it." "No." Adrian glanced back at her. They did. Before she could ask who they were, he removed a thin black device from his pocket and attached it to the reader. A pale blue light flashed. The panel remained locked. Adrian frowned slightly. Emily stepped closer. "What is it?" "It won't open." "That's a surprise." "It should have." "Maybe my father didn't trust you either." His eyes lifted to hers. There was something unreadable in them. "Your father trusted me with the only thing he had left." Emily's pulse shifted. "What?" Adrian looked away before answering. "You?" The word hung between them. Not romantic. Not soft. Worse. Heavy with history she did not know. Emily wanted to ask what he meant, but the reader suddenly beeped. A mechanical click echoed inside the wall. The steel door opened by 1 inch. Not because of Adrian's device. Because Emily had stepped close enough. Her face went still. Adrian noticed. Slowly, he looked from the door to her. "It recognized you." Emily stepped back. "No." The door clicked again, wider this time. A line of white light cut across the cellar floor. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Emily." She shook her head. "No. Don't say my name like you already know what this means. I think your father built this room for you. My father died when I was 9. "No," Adrian said quietly. He vanished when you were 9. The distinction felt like a knife carefully placed between her ribs. Emily pushed the door open before fear could stop her. White light flooded the cellar. Beyond the steel door was a room that did not belong beneath an old lighthouse cottage. It was modern, silent, windowless, walls covered in old servers, locked cabinets, maps, photographs, radio equipment, and sealed black cases. At the center stood a metal desk. On the desk was a single photograph. Emily walked toward it, as if the floor might disappear beneath her. The photograph showed her father, older than she remembered him, thinner, bearded, alive, standing inside the lighthouse lantern room. Beside him stood a younger Adrian Vale, not the polished, feared man beside her now. A younger version, blood on his shirt, one arm in a sling, eyes colder than they should have been for a man that young. Emily picked up the photograph with trembling fingers. The date on the back was 12 years after the Vesper disappeared. Her breath left her. No. Adrian said nothing. Emily turned the photograph toward him. You knew? His silence answered before he did. Yes. The room seemed to tilt. You knew my father was alive? Yes. And you never told me? I couldn't. She laughed, sharp and broken. You couldn't? Adrian's face hardened slightly, but his voice stayed controlled. If I had come to you when you were 16 and told you your dead father was alive, every organization hunting him would have found you within 48 hours. You don't know that. I do. You don't get to decide what truth I deserved. No, he said. I decided what danger you could survive. The sentence landed like a slap. Emily stepped closer to him. You sound just like every monster who thinks protection is the same as control. Something flashed in Adrian's eyes. This time it was anger, not at her, at the accusation, at himself, at the truth buried inside it. You are right, he said. Emily stopped. She had expected denial. Not that. Adrian looked down at the photograph in her hand. I have controlled information around you for 12 years. I have paid men to redirect threats. I have erased your name from files. I have bought silence from people who would have sold your location. I have done unforgivable things to keep you alive. His eyes returned to hers. But I have never mistaken that for innocence. The room went quiet. For the first time, Emily saw something beneath his control. Not softness, not romance, guilt. Deep, old, and disciplined into stillness. She looked away first, not because she trusted him, because if she kept looking, she might start to understand him, and she did not want that. Not yet. On the wall behind the desk, a large map of the world was pinned beneath clear glass. Red lines connected cities: London, Monaco, Vienna, Istanbul, Boston, Tokyo, Buenos Aires. Black marks sat beside names and dates. Emily stepped closer. What is this? Adrian answered from behind her. The Shepherd Network. The name made the room feel colder. What is that? A private assassination system built at the end of the Cold War. No governments, no flags, no ideology, only contracts. Emily stared at the red lines. And my father? He helped design the communication protocol that controlled it. She turned. My father was not an assassin. No, he was worse. Anger surged through her. Adrian continued before she could speak. He was the man who made assassins impossible to trace. Emily went still. The storm above them seemed far away now. My father saved sailors. He fixed radios. He taught me how to read the weather. Yes. And he built a murder network? Yes. The word was brutal, because it did not try to soften anything. Emily looked back at the photograph. Her father's eyes, her father's hands. The same hands that had lifted her onto his shoulders. The same voice that had told her the sea was dangerous, because it never apologized for what it took. She whispered, Why would he do that? Because men like us are very good at convincing ourselves that Evil becomes acceptable when it is done for the right employer. The honesty in Adrian's voice made her turn. You include yourself in that? I built my empire from the ruins men like your father left behind. That's not an answer. It is the only honest one I have. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then, a screen on the far wall flickered to life. Both of them turned. Lines of code moved across the monitor. Then came a message. Plain white text on black. Signal confirmed. Lighthouse node active. Shepherd wake sequence initiated. Emily's mouth went dry. What does that mean? Adrian's face changed. Everything human vanished. The Mafia Boss returned. It means the network knows where the signal came from. The screen flickered again. A second message appeared. Primary bloodline identified. Emily stared at the words, primary bloodline. Her hand rose slowly to her chest. No. Adrian stepped toward the console. Damn it. What does that mean? He did not answer fast enough. Emily grabbed his arm. What does it mean? He looked down at her hand on his sleeve. For 1 second, neither of them moved. Then he answered. It means your father did not just build the signal. His eyes met hers. He built the final key into you. The room seemed to lose oxygen. Emily let go of his arm. Outside, thunder rolled over the island. Below the map, one more line appeared on the screen. Air node confirmed. Emily Dawson. Then the entire room turned red. An alarm began to pulse through the walls. Somewhere above them, a gunshot echoed from inside the cottage. Adrian pulled his weapon instantly. Emily froze. A voice came over the hidden speaker system. Not Adrian's men. Not the warning voice from the radio. A woman's voice. Elegant, cold, amused. Hello, Emily. The speakers crackled. We have been waiting a very long time for you. Adrian stepped in front of Emily. Gun raised toward the cellar stairs. His body became a wall before she could even breathe. The woman's voice continued. Bring us the girl, Mr. Vale. A poser. Then the sentence that turned Adrian's expression deadly. Or we wake every shepherd left in the world. Or we wake every shepherd left in the world. The words echoed through the hidden room like the final warning before an avalanche. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The crimson emergency lights continued to pulse across the walls, washing the underground chamber in alternating shadows. Emily could hear her own breathing. Somewhere above them, another gunshot cracked through the cottage floorboards. Adrian never looked away from the cellar entrance. His pistol remained perfectly steady. You've already breached the perimeter, he said calmly. You wouldn't be negotiating unless something prevented you from coming downstairs. A soft laugh drifted through the speakers. Still arrogant. Still predictable. The woman's amusement faded. You know who I am. I recognized your voice before you finished the first sentence. Emily looked from Adrian to the speaker mounted high in the corner of the room. You know her. I hoped I never would again. Silence answered before the woman spoke once more. Tell her my name. Adrian's jaw tightened. No, I said tell her. The lights flickered. For the first time since Emily had met him, Adrian hesitated. Finally he answered. Isabella Laurent. The name meant nothing to Emily. The reaction on Adrian's face meant everything. Isabella spoke again, almost gently. You never told her about Geneva. Emily caught the smallest change in Adrian's breathing. What happened in Geneva? He didn't answer. Above them, heavy footsteps thundered across the cottage floor. One of Adrian's security officers shouted. Movement on the east side. Automatic fire erupted outside. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Emily instinctively stepped backward. Adrian shifted with her without thinking, placing himself between her and the staircase. She noticed. He didn't. His attention remained fixed on the entrance. Your people won't hold them forever, Isabella continued. They only need to hold them long enough. For what? Adrian's eyes moved toward the world map covering the far wall. For me to understand why you need Emily alive. Another pause. Then Isabella laughed again. You always were the smartest man in every room, and you always assumed you were. The monitor suddenly changed. The world map dissolved. Satellite images replaced it. Bellrock Island. Thermal. Signature. Moving. Emily counted them automatically. 1, 6, 12, 20. More dots appeared along the cliffs. They're surrounding us, she whispered. No. Adrian studied the display. They're avoiding this room. Emily frowned. Why? They're afraid. Of what? Instead of answering, Adrian walked toward one of the locked steel cabinets. He entered a 12-digit code. Nothing happened. Emily frowned. You don't know it? I know my code. He looked toward her. I don't know yours. Before she could ask what he meant, the cabinet emitted a soft tone. Access denied. Primary air required. Emily stared. You've got to be kidding. Adrian stepped aside. Tre. I don't even know what this thing is. You don't have to. Reluctantly, Emily approached. The scanner illuminated. A narrow beam swept across her face. The steel locks disengaged instantly. Inside rested a single black case, no larger than a briefcase. No markings, no labels. Only one silver sentence engraved across the lid. When she returns, trust her choice. Emily swallowed. My father left this. I think he did. She reached toward it. Adrian caught her wrist. Not roughly, firmly. Wait. She looked at his hand, then at him. You told me to open it. I told you to survive. There could be answers inside. There could also be enough explosives to erase this island. Emily searched his expression. He wasn't exaggerating. He was calculating. Slowly, he released her wrist. I'm opening it. I know. You can't stop me. I won't. She knelt beside the case. Her fingers trembled against the latches. Behind them, another explosion shook the cottage. The lights dimmed. Pieces of stone fell from the ceiling. The first latch opened. Then the second. The lid lifted. Emily expected weapons, documents, hard drives. Instead, there was only an old cassette recorder and a sealed envelope. Both looked decades old. Her hands shook harder. The envelope carried only 2 handwritten words. Emily. She opened it. Inside rested a single sheet of paper. My little lighthouse. If you are reading this, then I failed. Emily closed her eyes. It was his handwriting. She knew every curve of every letter. She had spent years tracing birthday cards he wrote before disappearing. This was unmistakably his. She continued, Never trust anyone because they claim they protected you. Not governments, not organizations, not the people who loved me. Especially not the people who loved me. Judge them only by what they choose to sacrifice after they meet you. Emily's throat tightened. She looked toward Adrian. He remained near the staircase, listening to the battle above. He had not asked to read the letter, had not stepped closer, had not demanded it. The next line froze her. There is one man who will eventually find you. He will believe he owes me a debt. Do not carry that burden for him. If he protects you, make sure it is because he chooses you, not because he is still trying to save me. Emily lowered the page. Adrian finally turned. Something in her expression told him enough. Your father mentioned me. She nodded slowly. He expected you. Adrian said nothing. He looked older than he had minutes earlier, as though 20 years had settled onto his shoulders all at once. Emily picked up the cassette recorder. How do we play this? Before Adrian could answer, the recorder clicked by itself. Neither of them had pressed anything. A man's voice filled the room. Older, calm, exhausted. Emily immediately recognized it. Her father. If you're hearing this, then Shepard has already awakened. Emily covered her mouth. I never built Shepard. A pause. I built the key that could destroy it. Adrian closed his eyes, as if he had waited decades to hear those words spoken aloud. The people hunting my daughter believe she is the final activation key. Another pause. They are wrong. Emily stared at the recorder. They've misunderstood my work. The real key is trust. Outside, another barrage of gunfire erupted. The recording continued. The protocol cannot be completed by blood alone. It requires voluntary authorization. Emily frowned. What does that mean? Adrian answered quietly. It means no one can force you to activate it. The recorder continued. If my daughter chooses no one, Shepard dies forever. Emily slowly looked at Adrian. And if I trust the wrong person? The tape answered for him. Then the world will inherit every monster I tried to bury. The recording stopped. Complete silence settled over the room. Then every monitor in the bunker went black, honor be on, until only a single message remained glowing in white. Unknown access detected. Inner door unlocked. Emily frowned. There wasn't another door. There is now. A low mechanical rumble echoed through the bunker. The back wall began to separate. Cold air drifted from the darkness beyond. Not from the sea. From somewhere much deeper beneath the island. Adrian slowly raised his weapon again. His expression became unreadable. I was afraid of this. Emily stepped beside him. What is it? I don't know. He looked into the opening. But your father spent 20 years making sure no one reached whatever's waiting down there. The darkness beyond seemed endless. Then, somewhere far below, a single light turned on, as though something had been waiting for them to arrive. The narrow passage descended far beneath the foundations of the lighthouse. Cold air drifted upward, carrying the scent of stone, seawater, and machinery that had somehow remained alive beneath the island for decades. Neither of them spoke. Emily walked beside Adrian, one hand gripping the cassette recorder, the other wrapped around the flashlight she had found inside the bunker. Above them, gunfire continued to echo through layers of rock. The battle for the island was still raging. Down here, there was only silence. After nearly 200 stone steps, the tunnel opened into a cavern unlike anything Emily imagined could exist beneath Bellrock. It looked less like a bunker and more like an abandoned command center. Massive steel generators lined both walls. Dust covered rows of dormant computers. Maps hung from concrete pillars. Most astonishing of all, the center of the room contained an enormous circular table carved directly into the rock. Dozens of brass nameplates surrounded its edge. Some had faded. Some had been removed. Some still carried names. Adrian stopped walking. I've seen photographs of this place. Emily looked at him. You've never been here? He slowly shook his head. Your father made sure no one ever found it. His voice carried something unfamiliar. A respect. Not for the room, for the man who had hidden it. Emily's flashlight settled on the middle of the table. A single leather journal rested there, untouched, waiting. Across its cover were 4 embossed words, "For my daughter only." Emily reached toward it. Again Adrian's voice stopped her. Listen. She froze. Far away. Footsteps. Not above them. Inside the tunnel. Someone else had found the chamber. Adrian extinguished his flashlight instantly. Darkness swallowed the room. Emily heard the quiet, metallic sound of his pistol being raised. 3 figures emerged from the tunnel entrance. Night vision goggles glowed faint green. Black. Tactical uniforms. No insignias. No voices. They advanced with the practiced precision of people trained never to hesitate. The first operative stepped toward the journal. A suppressed shot cracked through the darkness. The bullet shattered the floor inches from his boot. The intruders scattered immediately. Gunfire erupted. Concrete splintered around the chamber. Emily dropped behind the stone table as bullets ricocheted from the walls. She caught brief glimpses of Adrian moving through the darkness. He never stayed where she expected. Each movement was deliberate, calculated. He wasn't fighting to eliminate everyone. He was forcing them away from her. One attacker managed to reach Emily's side. Before she could react, Adrian drove the man backward with enough force to send both of them crashing into an old control console. The console exploded in sparks. Emergency lights flickered to life throughout the cavern. For a single instant, the entire underground chamber glowed crimson. Emily saw Adrian kneeling over the fallen attacker. His pistol remained aimed. He never pulled the trigger. Instead, he demanded quietly, "Who sent you?" The operative smiled through blood. Too late. He pressed something hidden inside his sleeve. The walls trembled. Deep within the cavern, ancient generators began humming. Emily looked toward the ceiling. What did he activate? Adrian's expression darkened. Not here. He grabbed Emily's wrist. We're moving. But the journal. You take it. She snatched the leather book from the table as another explosion echoed through the tunnel behind them. Stone rained from above. The attackers retreated into the collapsing passage. Adrian guided Emily through a narrow corridor on the opposite side of the chamber. They emerged inside a natural sea cave. Moonlight poured through an opening high above. For the first time since the storm began, patches of blue sky were visible between the clouds. Emily leaned against the cave wall, trying to steady her breathing. Adrian remained focused on the tunnel entrance. You knew there would be another exit. I hoped. You always have a backup plan. Itre. Emily looked down at the journal in her hands. If you're always prepared. Her voice softened. Why do you still look worried? For several seconds he didn't answer. Finally he looked at her. Because none of my plans included you becoming the center of this. The honesty surprised both of them. He seemed almost ready to say something more. Instead, his satellite radio crackled. Vale, one of his team, answered between bursts of static. Sir, we've secured the lighthouse, but the attackers weren't trying to take the island. Adrian frowned. What were they trying to do? They were buying time. Emily and Adrian exchanged a glance. Behind them, the underground generators roared louder. The journal suddenly grew warm in Emily's hands. She opened it instinctively. The first pages contained diagrams, communication frequencies, encrypted routing tables. Then she reached the final handwritten entry. The date was only 3 days before her father's disappearance. If you are reading this, someone has already failed. The Shepherd Protocol was never my greatest mistake. Believing I could control the people who wanted it was. Emily turned the page. A photograph slipped onto the cave floor. She picked it up. It showed her as a little girl standing beside her father. Another man stood several steps behind them. Young, dark-haired, watching them from a distance. She recognized him immediately. Adrian. He looked no older than 30. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't posing. He was standing watch. Emily slowly raised the photograph. You were there. Adrian stared at it. For a long moment. Yes, you promised him. I did. You've been protecting me since before I even knew your name. He didn't deny it. I failed once. His voice was barely above a whisper. I wasn't going to fail twice. Emily searched his face. She no longer saw only the composed strategist who had arrived with helicopters. She saw a man carrying the weight of a promise made decades earlier, not because anyone forced him, because he had chosen to keep it. Before either of them could speak again, the journal emitted a faint electronic tone. Neither of them had touched it. A hidden compartment opened inside the back cover. A small brass key slid into Emily's palm. Attached to it was a handwritten label. The light above. Emily frowned. The lighthouse. Adrian nodded slowly. This isn't over. No. He looked toward the island where smoke still drifted above the cliffs. It's only changing. Far above them, the lighthouse beam suddenly came back to life. For the first time since the storm began, its white light swept across the sea, not every 7 seconds, every 6. Emily's expression changed. That's different. Adrian followed the beam. It isn't malfunctioning. It's sending a pattern. Emily looked at the journal, then toward the lighthouse, then back at Adrian. My father left us one more message. Adrian holstered his weapon. Then we'd better reach it before someone else does. Together, they stepped out of the cave and began climbing toward the lighthouse, unaware that high on the cliffs across the island, a lone figure watched them through a sniper scope. The woman lowered the rifle. A faint smile crossed her face. "Saw," Isabella whispered into her radio. They found the first key. She turned away from the cliff edge. "Prepare the second phase." Behind her, a convoy of black vehicles emerged from the fog rolling in from the mainland. The island was no longer the battlefield. It had become the first move in a much larger game.